Not much.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
What do you go? You guys, this is 16 feet. Okay. All yours.
Call meeting to order. I assume we've met the FOIA requirements.
We have.
In that case, we're member short. JV guy here hasn't made it. Other than that, we're good. Start down the agenda, the approval of minutes of January 9th, 2025. Get a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Items for information and discussion. You ready, Cheyenne?
Sure, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so I thought Nicole was joining, but no worries at all.
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
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 Yes, I am here. So if you want to share your screen, or can we share our screen, Pete?
I think it has
Yeah.
the
I don't know if I need to give you permission or.
Or do you have the slides? Sorry, that's the only thing I'm not sure on how we are sharing the slides.
Yeah, I do not have the slides. I don't know.
yeah, no problem.
Pete, you should be able to make her a co-host, which would give her the ability to share the slides.
Okay, so Cheyenne, do you have them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So while Cheyenne is doing that, I'll get us started here with just a quick update. So as you all know, we have had a really good meeting with the entities of Seabrook last month. And we had an opportunity to really slowly and thoughtfully step through these goals, objectives, and recommendations of the marsh management plan. So as you all remember, we've been working on this now for several months, starting around summer of 2024. And we're to the point now where we feel very comfortable with the objectives and recommendations here. So we said we bring them back to you with the input from the entities and go through them. And then after this, we really see this as kind of our last real working session with these. We'd like to formulate the draft plan and share it with you probably to go to council in March, the late March meeting, but we might do a work session in March and then ask them to adopt it in April, and we'll work that out with Joe. But basically, you know, we want to kind of work through these, review with you one more time, get you the draft marsh management plan for your final review, and recommendation to council would be the next steps after this. Does that make sense for everyone?
Think so.
Okay, great. So then what we'd like to do then is just kind of walk through this document here. So as you recall, we have 5 overarching goals. The first one you see on the screen is engage. Then we have monitor, protect, restore, and adapt. And you don't have to scroll through those right now, Cheyenne, but we'll hit on engage here first. And so if you want to try to minimize some of the other stuff we're seeing on the screen there as best you can, Cheyenne, maybe view that in a full page. If you go under view, maybe you could view as a full page view or something. But in the meantime, we've got the first goal being educate the public property owners, visitors, and decision makers. So this is the one where this is a really important goal, right? Making sure everyone understands what we're trying to do here, creating and distributing educational resources, looking at showcasing demonstration sites on neighboring public marsh fronts. So make sure people are aware, for example, of what's going on over at Mingo Point, and that's something that is a really good marsh management strategy. And then offering training opportunities for town staff and appointed officials. You know, we talked about how we really don't want to well, we need to make sure that everyone is making decisions at the town level is on the same page. Sometimes these plans get written and the BZA doesn't know what's going on with it. So we want to make sure, for example, we want to make sure that all the groups within the town and then all the entities are also brought on board and engaged in understanding this. So what I'll do is step through these 3 objectives under engage and then pause and see if y'all have any questions or input or feedback or changes. The second one under engage is create volunteer opportunities. So here, the first thing we're saying is complement the monitoring goal by developing citizen science programs for data collection. So we'll get to monitoring in a minute, but there's tons of opportunities to actually get people out there helping us do what we need to do, inventorying marshfront structures and things, measuring different elements of the marsh. Then the second one is to complement the restore goal by partnering with outside entities like Sea Grant, like the DNR SCORE program. Next page. The third is to develop a communications plan. So, it's great to do all this, but we have to document it, let people know, get the word out. That one's pretty straightforward. Working with both the internal town communication channels and the entities. And then, developing a tourist education campaign as well. So that's part of, getting flyers and short-term rentals. So really getting everyone aware and up to speed about the importance of the marsh and why we need to do these things. Then finally, kind of just constantly seeking stakeholder and community input, encouraging participations, providing regular updates on the progress toward implementation of the plan to keep everyone informed, involved, and letting us know what's going well and what isn't. So I'll pause there. Do y'all have any questions or suggestions for changes for this engage goal?
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay, then we'll move on to monitor. We've been really fortunate with our monitor goal to have partnered with Lee Bundrick from the Kiowa Conservancy. He's actually gotten us ahead of the game here, which was kind of my hope when we started this. You'll remember I said, ideally, we will start implementing some of these recommendations while we're doing the plan. And with Lee's help, we've been able to do that. So identifying and defining the extent and characteristic of marsh areas, Lee has helped us accomplish a lot of these. So the first one, he's able to map the critical line from just elevation data. So most of the things you see here under these first bullets are these, let's call them remote sensing type mapping exercises, right? It's not physically going out and ground truthing. We presented to you some of the marsh migration pathways. We'll include maps of all of those things in the plan, the vegetated, unvegetated ratio. And you can see their reference figure in the plan, reference figure in the plan. So those will refer to the actual maps in the plan once it's drafted. Mapping the marsh frontage within the town. What is linear footage of marsh frontage, right? We don't know that answer yet. So these are some things that came up during the entities meeting that we included. The second one is inventorying marshfront structures. So, what is out there that is crossing the critical line? How many buildings are on it? How much pervious coverage do we have that's causing runoff into the marsh? And then the last one is directly measure the marsh attributes. So this is where we're quality checking some of this remotely sensed data and getting out there and surveying the critical line, measuring marsh areas that have accreted significantly. Sequoia mentioned that some of those areas are posing challenges to infrastructure maintenance and drainage. So those are some things we're recommending some direct measurements of. And then finally, the water level sensors are really useful. We have one on Seabrook now, and Kiowa has a couple, but they're really useful in measuring marshfront flooding and understanding how flooding is evolving over time. Are we having more king tides this year than last year? Yes. So we want to make sure we keep investing in that. Any questions or comments on the monitor goal?
I can see how this would work going forward to give information of how it has evolved over the last year, over the last 5 years, 10 years.
Yes, we do. So in fact, we'll include in there data that, so the LiDAR data, right? The elevation data of the marsh that was collected back in 2009, I believe. And then Sequoia had a survey run more recently. So we do have a 10-year comparison, and we can share that map with you here if you'd like, of where we're actually showing over the last 10 years how the creek beds have changed, where we are seeing those creeks migrating into marshfront property, right? That's a big challenge that we see. So we're really excited to be able to measure that as well. And that's a good point. We can kind of integrate that looking back aspect in these recommendations as well. You know, it's not just going forward, but how have things changed in recent years?
Thanks.
Other suggestions on this? Okay, next one, Cheyenne. Okay, this goal is called Protect. And if you recall, this one has a lot to do with what the town can do up on the marsh front. So zoning, ordinances, new policies. The objectives here are to reduce threats to property, critical infrastructure, and address erosion. So this is where we're looking at really balancing property protection with marsh preservation, right? Making sure that the zoning, the new ordinances are allowing for both. Our recommendation is to utilize data collected in the monitor section for infrastructure maintenance and improvements. So we don't want to, you know, recommend we might want to recommend a harder structure, for example, like EnviroLock on a marsh area that we're seeing from the monitoring data that is really challenged by erosion, right? It's lighting up as one of these red areas of concern. The second is adjusting the local regulatory framework to protect marshlands. So some key recommendations here are changing the critical line setback, which you presently have, which is a 25-foot setback, and not just having it be a setback, but also now modifying that ordinance to say it's also a vegetative buffer. Okay, we don't want lawns in there. We want native plants that can actually help reduce runoff into the marsh. So that's one of the recommendations. Another one would be to transition the agricultural zoning area to a more appropriate zoning district along the marsh front, right? We don't really want that development pressure. We want to protect the sensitive ecosystems there. The third objective under Protect is to evaluate green and gray infrastructure solutions. So I just mentioned the potential use of something like EnviroLock, which is sort of stacked bags along a marsh border. Not a bulkhead, it's softer, it's green, and those are the kind of allowable uses within the setback, the third bullet there, that we want to consider. And Kiowa's Nature-Based Solutions Manual has a number of great recommendations for things we think should be allowed within the setback. So those will be included. And then finally, conserving marshfront property, right? Working with the Green Space Conservancy, with Camp St. Christopher on conservation easements. They'd like to do some more conservation, and looking at some of these areas of repetitive flood loss for potential future conservation. So we're really excited about this goal. I think that's all. Is there anything on the next page, Cheyenne? Yeah. So getting back to this Protect goal, this is the one where I think we can really advance the town's marsh front management quickly after adoption of the plan with implementing some of these recommendations. So any questions or changes to this one?
Sounds good.
All right, 2 more to go. The last one's short. This restore is the fourth, and it's a little bit complex. So this will be the last major thing we review. So here we're talking about actually restoring the marsh, restoring the uplands adjacent to the marsh. So the first one, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but we have surveyed you all and the key stakeholders numerous times. So the way that we have ordered everything here is based on input from the community. It's based on what the community sees as the highest priority, okay? long-term marsh restoration is not the easiest thing we're recommending here. It's not first because we think we should do it right away. It's first because it's the highest priority. Just keep that in mind as you see kind of the order of these things. So here we're looking at areas, again, we're using the mapping products from the monitor section, bullet 2, to identify areas where perhaps we could work with SCORE, we could work with Sea Grant, who's doing some work on thin layer placement. You remember we invited those guests to a past meeting. So that, thinking about long-term marsh restoration really in collaboration with our experts and our external partners. The second is collaborate for community restoration efforts. So we realize we don't have a ton of publicly held marshfront on Seabrook. So we want to, again, work on some partnering here using the Kiowa Conservancy's Nature-Based Solutions Manual, which I mentioned before. Also, the club's certification with Audubon is a great example of how we can integrate sustainability and educate the privately held marshfront owners on how to do some of these things, right? If we're going to turn the setback into a vegetative buffer, for example, Audubon has great suggestions on, what that actually looks like in real life. And then assess the feasibility of pilot projects. That's near the bottom of this one, to provide these hands-on in-person demonstrations of best marshfront management practices, right? Is there something we could partner with the marina on to showcase some things that the property owners should do along their marsh fronts? The third is encourage private marsh restoration. So here is where we want to create incentives for adjacent property owners to work together for restoring privately held land. And a great idea that came up during the entities meeting was to demonstrate marshfront vegetative buffers in partnership with the Green Space Conservancy. Apparently y'all have done something similar called the Back Dunes Garden Project. So it's that type of a demonstration that we hope we could replicate on the marshfront. The final objective under the restore goal is explore creative funding opportunities. Of course, we can't do any of this without getting external funding, and then perhaps even getting some funding to the private property owners in the form of mini grants, but also working with local community organizations, as you do on the committee here for marshfront education. A lot of ideas in here, and would love to hear any feedback or questions that you all have.
FEMA may not be around.
There's a lot of uncertainty with federal funding right now. Absolutely.
No, I think it's a good starting place. Whole thing.
Great. Then the last one is our adapt goal. And this is the one where we just constantly keep making sure we're not stagnant, that we are identifying adaptive management strategies, both on the ground and sort of through the planning process. You'll see under conduct annual implementation assessments. So we really hope that this plan doesn't sit on the shelf and just get updated every 5 years. We hope that at least annually the committee might revisit, hey, what did we recommend council do, and are we doing it? And if so, how well? What is some of the low-hanging fruit maybe we haven't addressed yet that we could? The second, adapt to changing climate conditions and rising sea levels. We certainly want to make sure that language carries through to other plans. You'll see the resilience element of the comp plan highlighted there, and using, again, the monitoring goal, some of those mapping products to help us figure out, hey, what's the cost benefit here? Do we want to look into working on this? Is it worthwhile for the balance, like we said, between private property protection and marshfront environmental protection? So that is a quick overview of everything we've got for you. I hope you're happy with it. And if so, we would love your blessing to go ahead and finalize a draft plan for your approval.
Any comment?
Just had a quick one, and the earlier restored, as curious, as FEMA, for example, received some outside funding.
Has FEMA, can you say that one more time?
Has other groups received outside funding for their marsh plan, like?
Oh, yes.
Kiowa?
Yep, so that for one great example is this Kiowa manual that I keep referring to. So the Kiowa Conservancy received funding from NOAA's National Coastal Resilience Fund, which is mentioned there, and that's a one source of funding available for this. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of federal funding opportunities that are available for this type of work. And FEMA's pre-hazard mitigation grants, that's another one on Folly Beach where I am here. There's money from a BRIC grant, Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, to work on some marshfront drainage and pervious sidewalks and things like that. And I'm not sure if Seabrook, the town, has received any of those, but we can help you with, figuring those out. Figuring out what language to use with the new administration. That's something else we've been working on. So the opportunities are there.
Provided we can get money to a private organization. Because the other ones you mentioned are all public.
Yes, and that's why I totally agree with you. And that's why the big emphasis on partnerships. But coastal communities are still a high priority of these grant programs. So we do think that we can work with you on that.
Sounds good.
And that, yeah, the town itself is a municipality, right? So they would qualify. Okay, well, thanks again. We've really enjoyed working on this with you. We will bring the draft plan. We'll send you the draft plan electronically in advance of the next meeting, and our hope would be that we could get your vote of approval to recommend it to council next time.
Sounds good.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item. Grant guidelines for the environment and wildlife conservation grants.
Yeah, I believe Joe's got some remarks.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yep.
we got you.
Okay, good. If you remember at your last meeting, we had talked about some proposed changes to the Environment and Wildlife Committee grants. The biggest one being some changes to the eligibility for organizations that would be requesting grants. So in between the last meeting and today, we did have some additional consultation with the town attorney, presented some information to council in executive session. So the changes that were discussed and recommended at your last meeting, we're talking specifically about the requirement that organizations must be registered with the South Carolina Secretary of State's office in order to be eligible for funding. That is now included in our grant eligibility requirements. So those were approved by council at their meeting a couple weeks ago. We have gone ahead and posted the grant guidelines and the grant application forms, and Abby's been working to try to get notifications out to folks that that information is now available. We will begin accepting them on March 1st. And if we receive any prior to your next meeting in March, we'll go ahead and plan to put those on the agenda for review and recommendation at your March meeting. So if any organizations have any questions about any of the new eligibility requirements or any updates to the guidelines or the process, they're welcome to reach out to us at Town Hall, and we're happy to walk through those changes with them.
Can you give us copies of the final copies? They said
yeah,
all
we-
rather hard to read.
Yeah, we can get you copies of the final one. Pete may have put in the the red line version in the packet. So yeah, we'll get you copies of the final clean version, and you know they're also posted on our website too.
Yeah, I read most of it, and it sounds like exactly where we wanted to go.
Yep. If anyone has any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them. I know one question that we asked when our attorney was coordinating with the municipal association. They did have a tax attorney that was on the line as they were having discussions, and you know, one of the questions that was asked was, you know, how much work is being involved in getting registered with the Secretary of State, and the tax attorney that was on the line basically indicated it's a pretty straightforward process. It's not really that, you know, not a huge amount of work has to go into it, but it is a requirement under the Charitable Solicitation Act in the state. So when an organization is just kind of operating, doing its own thing, you know, they may only be operating with member dues and things like that. There's no requirement that they register. It's really the virtue of once you start soliciting funds, which anyone who's submitting an application to us is soliciting funds, that's when they fall subject to the requirements of the act.
Anything else?
That sounds like it covers everything, then, being registered, the benefits of Seabrook Island, and attending EWC meeting.
So those were I think were the three. Mark, did you do that for the shorebirds or for birds? At the last meeting, you said you were, I thought you said you were looking into it.
We've looked into it. I think that the bigger question, Joe, help me with this, is, you know, any questions with smaller entities who may be operating at a club level or similar. From reading 3356, it looks like the exemptions are for people who have solicitations or revenues less than $7,500 would be
Right.
one claim to get an exemption. And I think that since we've had some requests in our committees from these smaller club organizations, I think that they're the people that may have questions, and I think that I'm really happy that the town's going to help them understand how to get those exemptions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I use the term register with the Secretary of State. There are a couple kind of different thresholds. So not every group is going to have a full registration. There are some that are outright exempt, and there's others. The biggest one, and this covers I think a lot of our groups that have requested funding in the past, if they raise less than $7,500 in a year, they don't have to have a full registration with the Secretary of State, but they are still required to apply for basically an exemption from the requirements of the Act. So there is still that extra step, but you know, we're not going to require full registration from those smaller ones. What we'd be looking basically is just have they applied and do they have documentation of their exemption. And I think that's really going to cover a lot of the, you know, the small groups that, you know, by and large are operating on a shoestring budget, you know, maybe doing just a couple small projects. The requirements for them are going to be even less than, you know, what a larger organization may have to go through.
And in the case of larger organizations, those are the ones that are making more than $20,000, and they are more than likely already registered in one of as a tax exempt, or and probably as a 501c3.
Yeah, I know the ones who we've worked with and have requested funding in the past, they're either already registered with the Secretary of State and I think in all the other instances, they do have the IRS designation as a 501c organization.
Pretty happy with that? Okay. We'll move on to the next one.
Sounds good.
Shorebird Steward Program. Statement of support. It's an action item. Any comments or questions on? I didn't get a copy of the document, but,
Yeah, I think Mark had written an email to the mayor and it copied Joe and me. I think Joe, help me on this. I think probably what will happen is there will be a proclamation similar to what y'all did for Red Cross back in February, and that'll go to the full council.
Have we done this before
yeah,
for shorebirds?
yeah, last year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't see any issue.
We've actually, this has been a request that's come in. This is, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth year where the shorebirds have basically just asked for an endorsement from council for their work, kind of an acknowledgement of what they're actually doing out on the beach in terms of monitoring and educating residents and visitors about the different shorebirds on the beach and the activities that they're undertaking, the nesting, migration, those type things, and really just trying from a educational standpoint to for we kind of use the term a soft touch, so it's not like an aggressive type thing, but they're there. I know in the past you'll see them out there, and they might have a little cart with a sign or something, and it'll be ask us about shorebirds, and they're there to answer questions and be a resource for people on the beach. So they've just asked for an endorsement from council to continue those types of activities. And like I said, this is, I think it's the third or fourth year this request has come through. So really all we're looking for today is just kind of an acknowledgement or recommendation from the committee to move forward with this again for 2025.
I had Bob Mercer come, who's the co-chair of the Shorebird Steward Program and president of SIB, if there are any questions about that and to help explain things. I'm sorry there's not an actual copy for people to read, but it's very similar to last year. Apparently,
It just says
Nobody
2025,
Right,
it's
right.
24.
so Bob's here if you have any
You have
questions.
anything to add, Bob?
No, it's something you've done in the past, and we really appreciate the fact that the town recognizes the value of what we're doing. And it's merely asking for them to continue that recognition.
Can I have a motion to recommend that we continue?
So moved. Yeah, that's
Second.
the words I guess we need. We continue this for 2025.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm recused.
I know, we don't want you voting. And now we're down to committee comments. I'm gonna give the first comment. We have the coyote meeting coming again on March 11th, 7 p.m. at the Lake House. Jared Crane is gonna be doing it again this year. We've got a lot of interest in coyotes in this town. And I mentioned to Fred that we're gonna cross an interesting thing from South Carolina DNR. Since 2002, the whitetail deer population has decreased by 30% because of the coyotes. They go after all the fawns. Some of them go after the large ones. That's all I've got. Other comments?
I don't know.
Okay.
In that case,
Motion to adjourn.
yep,